Marty Snyder has more on the leader down on pit road.
Well, it should be no surprise, and it's no surprise to these guys, or probably Coach up in the booth, that Bobby's running well. They knew they would be good on the long runs. They were a little worried about the short runs this morning. This is the third week in a row that Bobby has changed an engine on Sunday morning. They've been having some engine problems, but so far it's been pretty good for him. He finished third last week at Phoenix, and they've been running well. They know they are going to be good on these long runs, and they know also that their teammate Tony Stewart is going to be excellent on the long runs. Now let's go to Mike Massaro.
Thank you, Marty. Very similar down here with the John Andretti crew. They are preaching patience right now. They're anticipating a very long green flag run and don't want to push it to the limits too soon. Talked with some of the members. They seem to think that the 43 car may be a little bit better than the 18 in the corners. However, on the straightaways, they say the 8 wall.
But what happens is...
Back live at Homestead-Miami Speedway early in the Pennzoil 400, the inaugural NASCAR Winston Cup Series event here. Hey, log on to NASCAR.com for your online source to get all of the news on America's hottest racing circuit, news, results, a real-time look at the point standings before and after each race, plus audio wrap-ups and a special cyber chat with some of NASCAR's biggest stars. That's NASCAR.com, the official site of the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. By the way, after today's race, I wouldn't consider myself one of NASCAR's biggest stars, but they asked me to drop by for a little chat, so if you got some questions about today's race or our coverage of it, we'll be on NASCAR.com about a half hour after today's race is over.
Biggest star of NASCAR. You got it.
Pretty knowledgeable guy.
Don't start with that. Mark Martin's on the move pretty well here in the early going. Started 9th position. He has just passed David Green to take over the 5th position. There's David slipping back to 6th, and look at his car wash up off the bottom of the racetrack.
What's happening there, Alan? The tires are starting to wear. When they ended qualifying, David had that, pole qualifying run. The front of the nose was all taped up. All the grill openings were taped up, and he had all the aerodynamic downforce he could get. Now it's untaped, and they're just probably missing the chassis setup just a little bit, waiting for a caution to come. They come in and make an adjustment on it.
If there's not a lot of cautions, the cars, Mike, like you mentioned, that are good on long runs, they're going to have a big advantage on this racetrack.
Oh, they definitely are. You're seeing already. We've had some lapping already starting in the race, and the cars that have got the setup hooked up going, they're going to be pretty dominant here the rest of the day if it goes green for a long time.
The other thing, Alan, we talked about the points race for the championship.
Yep.
But there are all kinds of races all the way across this racetrack today, and when these drivers see somebody else, in some cases, it might be the guy they're ranked next to in points, you're going to see some very competitive racing there also.
Looking ahead from the championship leader, Dale Jarrett, at Jeff Gordon's car, washing wide off turn 4. Here's Jarrett trying to dive underneath him for 8th position.
Going right back to the chassis setup, going away just a little bit. Nobody's going to race hard right at this point of the race. They still got time to come in. They're going to have to stop for fuel and tires here not before long and make that adjustment.
Here's Mike Skinner going to go after Gordon, try and get him another position. So Gordon looking like he's struggling here in the early going, 38 laps in. Back to 10th position for Gordon now.
As a driver, that's a very frustrating situation. You've started the race, you're really good on new tires, and as you start to wear, and he's probably on the radio going, guys, it does not turn, help me.
He wants a caution right now.
Absolutely, he does. It's been an interesting last 6 weeks or so for Jeff Gordon. Of course, Ray Evernham and he splitting up about a month and a half ago. And then the last couple of weeks, there have been some headlines from within the Gordon race team. 5 members of his team leaving to go to the Robert Yates operation for next year. Its effect on Jeff Gordon's operation now.
I felt like we really got our focus back, went to Martinsville, won. Went into Charlotte, we won there. I mean, things were going well. The pit crew, definitely threw us off a little bit because we weren't prepared for that. So that's probably one of the key things that we're looking at right now is replacing the pit crew. Right now we've got a great pit crew. They're doing a good job, but there are distractions. There is a little bit of focus taken off of our team. And any time in Winston Cup racing that you have that, you're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage. So we've got to be able to put those things out of our mind, go out there, do our jobs, and work like the team that we've always been.
And there are some of the members of Jeff Gordon's team trying to do their work around crew chief Brian Weitzel. Jeff is talking of focus and this whole team concept. Let's get into that a little bit with you.
Let me say that this is a big deal. What the Rainbow Warriors did right here, they're no longer the Rainbow Warriors. They took off and left Jeff, and that's what he's talking about. Now, that's the disadvantage to having guys that are hired guns coming from the outside. You train them,
they're going to be your pit crew. You bring them in from the outside. Well, what happened in this case, they really don't have the loyalty to the team at that point. They're not hired full-time. They don't work full-time in the shop. And so in this case, they jump ship and take off. Most of our guys, I will say this, all work in our shop. They're employed there. I think you build more of a loyalty from that standpoint. And I think this really shook Jeff up. This definitely hurt him. Loses Ray. Obviously, the person that's been there with him the whole time. But now, I think this kind of, as he mentioned here in this little shot, I think this really affected his race team and shook him up.
Do you feel pressure as your driver, Bobby Labonte, comes up on the tail end of the field to put some more cars a lap down? Do you feel pressure to go out and have hired guns to try and compete on Sunday with some of these teams who do?
Alan, this is just like any other professional sport. You win with people. You have to pick the best people. This is, if you're going to spend time in anything, it's picking your people. And so, yes, we go out and try and do the best job we can in every single position. Find the best person in NASCAR to come in and work for you. So it's a people business, and you want to keep them. And so that's the challenge, because most of us live right in Charlotte. A guy can pick up and go to work for somebody else, never move his home.
Yeah.
Very competitive, and so you try and offer as many things as you can to make your race shop the place that everybody wants to work.
You saw Bobby Labonte put a lap on Johnny Benson and Rick Mast. Look at Dale Earnhardt. Remember we talked about him earlier, hadn't really moved up a whole lot? Well, now as the laps roll along, he's rolling up through the field and picking up a lot of positions. So Dale Earnhardt moved up to the 12th position at this point. All this behind, though, Bobby Labonte, who continues to lead the Pennzoil 400 in Homestead. And Andretti, Stewart, Mayfield, and Martin, the rest of the top 5.
We're back at Homestead-Miami Speedway. Brian Williams with you. Dale Earnhardt, you see, moving up into the pack now, 12th after having started well down in the pack. Dale Earnhardt this weekend about as buoyant as I've ever seen him. Had a long talk with him yesterday. Okay, so he doesn't like the fact that the Pontiacs are rumored to have better downforce and do better on this track. He said, quote, "I'll show you downforce," and so far he is. He and owner Richard Childress really believe and insist up and down and all over. They've got a package ready for next year. They keep saying to all who will listen, look out for the number 3 machine. Alan, back up to you.
Brian, no question, Dale Earnhardt has had the best season this season he's had in a little while. Picked up 3 wins, and you know, for Earnhardt it had been kind of a slump, if you will, over the last few seasons. But they do seem to have their whole operation coming back around, and Earnhardt is very emphatic that he is going to give Jarrett and Labonte and Gordon and the rest a run for that 8th Winston Cup championship in the 2000 season. He has just moved up and around Ricky Rudd. He's moved up and around David Green, and Rudd is trying to go with him as they go into 3.
I can tell you this, every driver out there respects this guy, Dale Earnhardt. I remember the very first time that Bobby popped Dale a little bit from behind. Bobby came on the headset and heard him say, "You tell him I didn't mean that. You tell him I didn't mean that." They got respect. Hey, this guy, believe me, when you see that black 3 behind you, watch out. They pull over.
And, you know, we laugh about that, but that's part of racing, Mike, is if you hit somebody, knowing whether or not that person's makeup is to come and hit you back.
Well, you know, Dale over the years has always been a very aggressive driver, and he earned the name Intimidator by that. He'll go up there and rub on you, boot on you just a little bit. No big deal, but you got to respect him for it.
I'd say this, too, though. When he's racing, this guy races for championships. You don't wreck when you're racing for championships.
Speaking of champions, here's Terry Labonte, the 96 and 84 Winston Cup title holder, who has not made a whole lot of progress toward the front, but that streak, look at that number on the left. Consecutive starts for Terry Labonte. He has just been an Iron Man. It's all, if you figure an average of 30 to 32 races a year for most of that time, he's been doing this a long time and never missed a beat.
And Bobby, his brother, racing for us, has broke his scapula twice. It has been out in the 4 years that he's raced for us. So this is kind of an amazing stat right here.
Unfortunately for Terry, he is not making his way up through the field as he would like to have today. He's mired back in 31st position after starting in 35th. So Terry not moving toward the front, which is a surprise because he seemed to have a pretty good car in yesterday's final practice. Bobby Labonte is your race leader, coming up on what should be green flag pit stops here in the next 15 laps or so. We're at 52 now. Expect a lot of the leaders on pit road around lap number 65. So we'll take a break and come back with more in just a minute. You're watching NASCAR on NBC.